Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Photography. My name's Steve Perry. I'm a headshot and portrait photographer from Ontario, Canada. And this channel is just going to be about my thoughts on photography, and especially designed for people who are just getting started. I've been shooting now for 6 years, so I'm not exactly a seasoned professional, but I have experimented with a lot of different things and a lot of different lighting setups, and I've looked into buying cameras and stuff like that, so I'm hoping that some of what I'll talk about will help you. And the first thing that we're going to talk about today is buying your first camera. So let's get on it. So how do you go about choosing your first camera? Well, when people ask me what camera should I buy, basically I've got two questions. Number one, what do you want to use the camera for? Do you want to just take family pictures, take vacation pictures? Do you want to get into wildlife, that kind of stuff? And secondly, and very important, is what is your budget for your camera? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down basically the types of cameras that you can buy, and then we'll take a look at some practical ideas for getting out there and getting yourself a good camera to start off with. So basically, if you go onto the Henry's camera site, which is one of my favorite places, that Henry's and Viztech, two really good Canadian photography companies. And if you look at on the Henry's site, they break it down into point and shoot, Enthusiast, Pro, and mirrorless cameras. So let's talk a little bit about that. Point and shoot cameras. Point and shoot cameras have come a long way. I remember my first point and shoot was a Sony, I think it was, and it was 4.1 megapixels or something like that. And it was fine. I took it on vacation. We took pictures, stuff like that, but I wasn't really into photography back then. In the point and shoot, there's quite a range of pricing. If I look at what Henry's has posted, you've got what they call their advanced point shoots, which run anywhere between $400 and $1,800. They have the super zooms, which are around $400 to $500, but have quite a zoom range. So their lenses, sometimes it's like 50 times zoom and stuff like that. So if you're looking to take a few bird photos and stuff like that, not a bad little choice. And then you get the small and easy cameras. Basically, just throw in your backpack. Throw in your purse and get out there, and if you see something you like and you're going on vacation, you want to take some family pictures. They can range anywhere between $200 to $400. And then you get into what Henry's calls the Enthusiast Cameras, which are mostly DSLRs. So for example, they've got a EOS 90D with a lens for $2,000. They've got the Nikon D500 body for $2,800. A Nikon D7500 for $1,600. And there's quite a rivalry between camera companies, and when it comes to Canon and Nikon, the reason that I chose Nikon was because I have a good friend of mine who had a Nikon, and I knew that he would be able to explain how to work it. I would be able to hopefully borrow some of his lenses once in a while because he had some pretty good lenses, and that's why I chose it. And not only that, I went into Henry's and I tried out the basically the only two cameras at that time for me that I was considering were Canon or Nikon. And I just like the Nikon cameras. I like the feel better, and I like the menu system better. So it was a good fit for me, and I think that's very important that you go into a reputable camera shop like Henry's or Viztech, and that you actually try out the cameras, and you'll find that the salesmen there are all quite competent, and they know an awful lot about the cameras and will be able to help you. I would not recommend going to a big box store because most of the people that are employed there are not specialists in their area and won't be able to help you the way a sales associate at Henry's can help you. I just about guarantee that. Now, if you're thinking of getting really serious and getting yourself, kind of a top-of-the-line pro camera, be prepared to spend some serious cash. Just to give you a few examples here, I've just written down a few. The Nikon D750 with a 24 to 120 millimeter lens, $2,700. Nikon D850 with a 24 to 120 millimeter lens, $5,000. Nikon D6 with no lens, $8,500. But that's the top of the line. That's their flagship model. So it's no wonder that it's that cost. It's definitely for someone who is a working professional. And then you get into mirrorless cameras, and mirrorless cameras are all the rage these days. That's all we hear about. We hear about the Sony mirrorless and the new Nikon mirrorless, and it seems to be where cameras are going. The only mirrorless camera I've tried is a Fuji X-T4. Very interesting camera, very small, very light. And I think that's one of the advantages of the mirrorless cameras is they are small, they are light. They're easy to carry around. The friend of mine that bought one, Helen, has small hands and is a small framed woman, and she doesn't want to carry around a really big heavy camera like the one that I have. I have a Nikon D800E, very big camera with the battery grip on. It's quite heavy, and when you start putting big lenses on it, it gets quite heavy. And dragging that around all day, it does take its toll, and it's it's something that that you have to think about. And that's why I said, what do you want your camera for, and that is going to decide on what you want. And in the mirrorless cameras, again, this comes from the Henry's site. They range anywhere between $1,800 to $5,500 for the body only. You can get a Fuji for $2,300 to $2,800. The Nikon Z cameras anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000. And you always have to remember that in addition to the cameras, you're going to be buying lenses, and we're going to talk about lenses right now. So what do you want your camera for? Do you want it for portraits, for snapshots, street photography, creative photography, wildlife, sports? Do you want your photography just to be a hobby, or are you thinking of down the road becoming a pro or a semi-pro in one of those particular genres of photography? And the minute you start talking about that, the one thing you've got to remember is that camera bodies are important, but more important than the camera bodies are the camera lenses. And you're going to get an awful lot of photographers that will tell you to spend your money on lenses. And to give you an idea, I'm just going to give you one example. As I mentioned before, I'm a portrait and headshot photographer. And a really good lens for portraits and headshots is is a Nikon 85 millimeter lens. And it comes in two versions. It comes in a 1.4 version and a 1.8 version. Now, if you're not into photography at all, that's not going to tell you an awful lot. But it's just basically two different lenses. One, a very fast lens, the 1.4 lets in a lot of light, and the other one, not quite as fast, but it's a 1.8. It lets a lot of light in. It is an excellent portrait lens. The difference, price. So for example, the 85 millimeter 1.4 is $2,000 right now at Henry's, whereas the 85 millimeter 1.8 is $600. So, I mean, you're talking 3 times the price, which is, a significant investment. I had a friend of mine who had the 1.4, the expensive lens. I got to try it out. I've got the 1.8, not as expensive. Don't have quite that kind of money, and I don't shoot a lot of professional gigs. So the 1.8 seemed the route for me to go. And when I've looked at the pictures of the 1.4 and the 1.8, I do notice a difference, but I don't notice a 3 times in price difference. Now, if I was making my living off of this, it'd be a no-brainer. I'd buy the 1.4. I mean, that's, you know, it's just a better lens. But because I'm not doing this professionally, the 1.8 is, and if I were making my living from it, the 1.8 is perfectly good. Takes wonderful photos. Most of the portraits that I take are taken with the 1.8. I also have a Sigma 105 macro that I use. Quite an expensive lens, but it's absolutely wonderful for macro photography, which I enjoy doing, and as a kind of a sideline. But it's also very good for portraits, and very good for headshots. Very, very sharp. Really good lens. So those are all the kinds of things that you have to think about. So I guess my suggestion would be shop around, go to the camera stores, try out the different cameras, talk to the sales associates, see what they think, tell them what it is you're going to be using it for. Now, you may only be, you know, you might be buying a camera today and all you're going to do is family shots and Christmas shots and vacation shots. But then you might get a little more interested in it, and then you might move up. And I would suggest that if you go the DSLR or the mirrorless route, is that before you invest in a new camera body, I would invest in better lenses, because I think the lenses will really be what will make the difference in the quality of photos you will get. And of course, always remember, like I said, what are you using it for? You know, if you're going to do bird photography, you're going to need a good camera, you're going to need a good lens, you're going to need a long lens. The lens that I use, I don't do an awful lot of bird photography, but I've got a 70-300, and I'm using a full frame camera on a crop sensor. That 300 becomes about 450, which gives you a reasonable distance. But if you're really going to get into it, you've got to get longer lenses than that. I used to have a Sigma 150-600 millimeter lens, and that was pretty good. But I don't do enough. Bird and wildlife photography, so I traded that in to buy a really good macro lens, because in the summers and stuff like that, I really like doing bugs, which is kind of strange, and flowers, and you know, a really good sharp macro lens was a better buy for me. So if you have any questions, just type them in down below. And like I said, the 2 main questions to ask yourself is, what do I want a camera for? And secondly, what is my budget? And I think if you think about it in those terms, it'll help you make a final decision that, at least for your first camera, will make you happy. So that's it for today, and we'll see you later. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and let's talk photography.